It's shocking how young kids are when they first get exposed to the topic of sex. Unless you want to raise your child in a complete protective bubble, like they're going to learn about it. It's important for them to learn about it from you instead of the weird things that they're going to hear from their friends on the playground and stuff like that. Hello and welcome to the Pillow Talks podcast. We're your hosts, Vanessa
and Xander Marin.
I'm a sex therapist with 20 years of experience.
And I'm just a regular dude. We share the ups and downs in our relationship while giving you step-by-step techniques for improving yours.
So make sure to subscribe for your weekly double date full of totally doable sex tips, practical relationship advice, hilarious and honest stories of what really goes on behind closed bedroom doors, and so much more. It's the sex education you wish you'd had. What did your parents teach you about sex? If you're like most people, the answer is probably shame. So we asked our Instagram audience, was sex a shameful topic for you growing up? 86% of people said yes.
That's a lot.
That is a lot. So, the thing about shame is that it's really generational. So I think most of us got shame from our parents. We were taught shame by our parents. They were taught shame by their parents, who were taught shame by their parent. This goes back generations and generations and generations, right?
And you might be thinking, wait, my parents didn't shame me about sex, but the reality is there's two different types of shame. What many of us receive is kind of a covert shame. Our parents don't even acknowledge sex. Like it's something we just don't talk about. And we get this idea that sex and our sexuality should be a private, maybe even a secretive thing. And when you get that type of message or like a lack thereof, we still feel kind of shameful about it. We're doing stuff, we're experimenting with things, we're having thoughts about things. And at the same time, we're like, ooh, something must be wrong with this. It is not okay to talk about it. Then on the flip side, there's also overt shame, which is like direct, shameful messages. You might have grown up in purity culture. You might have grown up with certain religions where there's a premium put on saving yourself for marriage, being pure, being a virgin. Good girls don't do insert the blank here. So
good girls don't insert what?
that may be the message too. Good girls don't insert anything.
So the thing about shame is that, we carry it with us into our adulthood. And then we can pass that shame on to our kids the way that our parents passed their shame on to us. We are just perpetuating that shame cycle, right? So we asked people on Instagram, are you worried about passing shame on to your kids? And 50% of people said that they were. Then we got a ton of DMs from people saying, I followed your account and now I'm feeling so much better about this. I feel better prepared to talk about this with my kids. So I think we're having a really positive impact in that sense, which is great. But it's still something that people are really worried about, really afraid of passing all of that shame on.
Yeah, and if this podcast episode is striking a nerve with you, we would highly recommend that you listen to episode 8 after this one, because in that episode, we talk about how to move forward if purity culture has harmed your sex life. So that can be a great episode to start to work through some of the stuff that you may have from purity culture.
So in this episode, we're going to be talking about how to cut through the awkwardness, the embarrassment, and the shame that we've been taught to have around sex and end this generational shame cycle. So our hope is that by the end of this episode, you'll feel empowered to help your kids grow up with a healthier and more positive view of sex.
But before we get into all that good stuff, we're going to share the review of the week. Incredible! 2 hands clapping. Thank you for those emojis. Absolute best. My husband and I have learned so much and have so many incredible conversations because of you guys. We first started listening on our 10-year anniversary road trip.
Ooh,
great idea.
Sounds fun.
We have learned so much about ourselves and about us as a couple. I look forward to the new episodes every week. Start from the beginning. You will not be disappointed.
Thank you so much for that great review.
Yeah.
And just a quick reminder that we are doing a giveaway with our reviews. Reviews are so crucial to helping the podcast survive. We really rely on you guys. And so as our way of thanking you for taking the time to leave a review, As soon as you leave a review, every week going forward, you will be entered into our giveaway to be the review of the week. And if you get featured as the review of the week, you can DM us on Instagram at Vanessa Marin Therapy, ask us a question, tell us about your situation, and we will give you a free mini coaching session. So this is just our way of saying thank you. The reviews really, truly mean a lot to us. And don't forget to leave your complicated emojis for Xander to figure out. I would have called that hands clapping emoji. 2 hands clapping emojis instead of 2 hands clapping.
Why do you need to say emoji? They just want to clap their hands. They can't clap their hands because it's not an audio.
Well, I thought you were saying the emoji is 2 hands clapping, but it's actually 2 emojis of the hand clapping.
How can you clap your hands without 2 hands?
I don't know. That's why I thought it was kind of weird that you were saying it. Well, no,
or maybe it should be 4 hands clapping.
There are some people who can do that, like, 1 hand clapping thing. Haven't you seen that? They can flap their hand really hard.
I am not that flexible.
Me neither. Anyways, let's get into it. As always, we recommend starting with yourself first.
Sorry, that's probably not what you wanted to hear.
I know.
It never is. It never is, but it really always is the first step.
Absolutely. So if you're trying to break this generational shame cycle with your children, the first thing that you need to get clear on is like, what are the beliefs that you're holding? What are the things that you do and don't want to pass on to your kids? There are some really important questions that you can ask yourself. What are the messages that I received about sex, directly and indirectly?
Yeah, I think that indirectly is important because a lot of people are like, oh, well, my parents didn't like tell me that I couldn't have sex or didn't shame me about it, but it's that covert shame where it's like, think about the conversations that you had. And if you are struggling to think of those conversations, it's likely you didn't have any conversations. You didn't feel like your parents were a safe place to talk about sex with. They felt awkward talking to you. And so what you got out of it was just like, oh, this is not okay to talk about. I talk to my friends about it, and then I feel like something is wrong with me, or I'm like behind the curve. I can't talk to my parents. I guess I just don't talk.
And then I think, asking yourself, like, what are the messages that I do want to pass down to my kids? I think it's important for us to acknowledge you may have been taught some positive messages about sex, whether directly or indirectly. It's not that we have to take every single thing we've been taught or everything we've been learned and throw it all out. Like, there may be some aspects of your history that were beneficial to you. That's just an opportunity to explore that. Then I would think about what are the messages that I don't want to pass down. So what are those direct or indirect messages that I learned that I want to make sure like that belief stops here. I am not passing this bullshit down more and more and more generations.
And then the most important part is to think about what new beliefs do I want to instill in my kids. So stuff that was not actively passed down to me. And I think a lot of us have these ideas. We've been around, we've been sexually active for a while, and we understand kind of like what the good messages around sex are, but it can be hard to actually deliver those because we haven't had a good example of anyone delivering it to us. So what do we do next?
Yeah, thank you for teeing me up there. So the second step is to actively work on having a healthier relationship with your sexuality. So this is kind of that, like put the oxygen mask on yourself first before helping others kind of message.
It's always such a cheesy metaphor, but it's so true. That's the reason why we use it. It's like, you can't help anyone if you are dying, if you can't breathe. Sorry.
So you're obviously not going to be dying around your beliefs about sex, but this really is a great opportunity for you to work on your own relationship with your sexuality, dive deeper into that for yourself so that you can pass that healthier relationship on to your kids. It's one thing for us to just have this philosophical view of like, oh yeah, I want to teach my kids that sex is not a shameful thing. But how are you going to do that if you're still completely mired in your own shame? Yeah. Like, kids know what's up, right?
Yeah. I was just about to say, I was like, I think it's so easy to be like, oh, well, my kids won't notice. Mm-hmm. Or, I know the right things to say, even though I don't really do those. And, the kids don't see what I'm doing behind closed doors. But kids pick up on your tone, your intonation. kids basically know if you're kind of bullshitting them.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think your kid's just going to see right through you if you're trying to like preach all this stuff at them, but you're not actively living that. You don't believe that. Like kids can tell when you don't actually have that. They're kind of little mind readers.
Oh, yeah. I think kids, especially teens, also love calling out hypocrisy when they see it. Because, it's like you haven't seen a lot of like, had to make really tough moral decisions or see a lot of gray area. And I feel like I learned about hypocrisy. And it was like, that's hypocritical. That's hypocritical. Oh my God.
Everything's hypocritical.
Everything's hypocritical until you start living life a little longer. And it's kind of like, there's a lot of gray area in the world.
Yeah. So obviously, like, it's not like you're going to put like 1 week of work into your sex life and all of a sudden you're healed and perfect. Like, that's definitely not what we're saying. But we do want to encourage you to start actively working on your sexuality. So working on your sexuality is like an entire podcast, multiple podcasts in and of itself. But some quick points that we wanted to mention is, first of all, like just listening to this podcast is a great step. You're learning more about sex. You're actively thinking about these topics that we're talking about. If you're not following us on Instagram or on our YouTube channel, definitely recommend following us there as well. So you just get even more information, more exposure to these topics.
Can I sidetrack for a quick second? This made me think about ourselves and kind of like the way that we used to show up on social media, our own sort of roadblocks that we were hitting with this business.
Oh, you and me?
Yeah, you and me, because about, I don't know, maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, we had a small social media account. Mm-hmm. We had this assumption that people didn't want to follow a sex therapist. People didn't want to talk openly about sex in a public way, despite the fact that, the message that we wanted to send is that it is okay to talk about sex in this open way. In fact, it's really beneficial to you. And so we were kind of trying to like skirt around this idea of, oh, well, no one's going to want to do this. So like, we won't talk about it totally openly on Instagram, or we'll just do a bunch of like text posts or something like that. We won't ask people to leave comments or tell us what they think. And I think that really hamstrung us. Like,
oh, yeah.
We were kind of stuck in that place for a long time. And then I don't know when it was. I don't know if there was an event where we were just like, screw this. Like, we're going for it. But yeah, we just kind of said, fuck it. And all of a sudden, it was like the floodgates were open. It was like then we were practicing what we were preaching. Mm-hmm. We started really showing up in stories and being honest about what was going on with us and just putting it out there.
Yeah.
The response was huge. I think people see when your words line up with your actions.
Absolutely. Yeah. We were living some hypocrisy at that time too. Yeah. So I think that's also a good reminder of like, it's never that you're going to get to this place where you have this perfect sexuality. Like we struggled with it then. We still have different kinds of struggles now. Like that's okay. Actually hit us up on Instagram if you are like an OG, if you've been following us for a while and you remember.
Yeah. Did you notice the shift?
Do you remember some of our weird posts and stories? Could you tell? We still had some stuff to work out ourselves. Okay, so getting back to it, what are some ways to work on having a healthier relationship with your sexuality? So definitely exposing yourself to more, healthy sexuality content, identifying your hangups and your goals. And that's kind of can loop back in with part 1 too, is you're trying to think about what do I want to pass on to my kids? That gives you this opportunity to think about, what are the things that I struggle with my sexuality that I don't want my kids to have to struggle with? Or what are the goals that I have for my sex life? How do I define a healthy sex life? And, how do I want my kids to see it? Definitely want to give a little plug for exploring your sexuality. I mean, we're really big believers. You have to explore to discover things. You have to try things out to figure out what you like and what you don't like. And the really cool thing about sexuality is that there are an endless number of things that you can explore. So there's always something new for you to learn and try out. Another point that we want to make is to invest in your sex life. So we're really big on giving away a lot of free content. It's written into our company values that we give away 95% of our content for free. That being said, I really do think that there's a shift that happens when you actually invest in your sex life. And
Yep.
I'm not saying you have to make like a huge financial investment, but whether it's buying a book, whether it's buying one of our $19 master classes or $25 workbook, when you make that investment, you become more invested. The example I always think of is like, how many emails do you have sitting in your inbox of like free newsletter stuff? Probably a lot of those are our emails that you're like, oh yeah, one day I'll open this up and like click through those links and watch that YouTube video or whatever. Like when we get stuff for free, we don't really value it. But when we do actively invest in it, it changes our relationship with it. So whether that's something from us or a book or something from somebody else, like we just recommend that you make some sort of investment in your sex life so that you can become more invested.
Yeah, I mean, the reality these days with the internet is that like you can basically learn anything for free if you put your mind to it. If you are open to the fact that it might take a while, you might have to sift through a lot of different stuff. There might be a lot of competing ideas, conflicting ideas, and you kind of have to synthesize it all. You can learn pretty much anything for free if you want to.
Yeah.
But do you? Do very many people actually do that? I don't think so. That's why people make online courses, because it's like we're taking the time to like put all the right information together in the right order. And when you buy a course, you're saying like, I'm investing like time and money and making a commitment. And without that financial commitment, it becomes really hard to be motivated.
So the final point that we want to make here is that thinking about this in the context of your children can actually be a really beautiful opportunity for self-discovery. If you approach wanting to work on your sex life and improve your relationship with your sexuality in the context of, I want better for my kids. I don't want my kids to have to suffer the way that I did. I want my kids to feel happy and healthy and whole. Like for a lot of people, it feels easier to open the door in that way versus, oh, I just want to have a smoking hot sex life, and not that there's anything wrong with that. Like, I think we should all just have that belief that like, I deserve to have so much fun and so much pleasure.
Yeah, I think a lot of people really do feel like they don't deserve that, but it's so much easier to convince yourself your kids deserve better.
Exactly.
But sorry, if you think your kids deserve better, you also need to make things better for you too.
Exactly. I think that this can be a nice way for a lot of people to open a door that they might otherwise have kept shut. Now let's talk about specific steps to take with your kids.
Yeah, you're probably like, okay, I understand, I get it, but like...
Get to the stuff about my kids.
What do I actually do? Because my parents didn't do shit.
So we got you. Don't worry, we have tons of tips. Okay, so the first tip that we want to go over with your kids is using anatomically correct language. So let's start with the basics here. I think, a lot of us grew up not hearing the words penis or vulva or vagina. We heard like some sort of cutesy word or some sort of slang instead. So we actually went over to Instagram again and we asked people like, what names were you taught for your body part? So like, what did you call a penis or a vulva in your family or like with your friends?
Or like, what did you hear? Maybe not taught. Like I doubt in many of these cases, we'll get into the list. I doubt someone was like, this is that part.
It was. Yes. We got so many DMs from people saying, yeah, my mom said it was this. My dad called it this.
Wow.
No, people were directly taught this is what this body part is called.
I guess for me, maybe my parents didn't really like give me any cutesy words. We just didn't have a lot of conversations in general. Like I knew what the right words were, but I picked this stuff up from other people. It's just slang.
Yeah. So first, I'm going to talk about the words for like vulva and vagina that were used. My favorite example came from a podcast that I did where the host said that her family growing up called it her shame.
Wow, just real explicit and direct. Like we are not hiding from the fact that sex is shameful. In fact, I'm going to name your body part shame.
It's so shameful. We called it shame. We called it twice. Like that blew my mind. Your shame. Can you imagine teaching like a little girl that her body part is called the shame? I could not believe it.
It's messed up.
Okay, so here were some of the hundreds, maybe thousands of responses that we got on Instagram. Cookie.
Wait, what?
Yeah, cookie.
I love cookies.
We got a lot more to go through, babe. Yes, you do love cookies. All kinds of cookies. Birdie? I'd never heard that, but apparently this is a southern one because a lot of people said bird or birdie, and they said they were from the South. Foo-foo, special place, dilly queen.
Dilly? Like Dairy Queen? Not quite.
Jiggy, front butt. That
like
one flayed me. It's like, oh my God, no. Puff, Pippa, Peeper, Pocketbook, Poochie, Muscle. Your muscle.
I guess that maybe could be a somewhat positive thing. You really work on your kegels.
Your Kiki. Smoosh, Biscuit. You know I love me a biscuit.
Yeah, biscuit. Or, I mean, is this the English biscuit or like the Southern biscuit? Because it could be a cookie too.
Toot, toot. Susie. This was one of like the top 3. Susie. Huh. I'm like, where the fuck did this come from? You're Susie? Is there some sort of backstory that we don't know? Let us know. Frog. That one was kind of upsetting to me.
If you kiss it, it turns into a prince.
Oh my God. That is.
Oh, well, it's wrong fairy tale.
I don't know if a lot of people would want that to happen. And finally, your Virginia.
Great. That's a good one. That's a good one. That reminds me of, what is the story of the Virgina?
Oh, the Virgina. I was babysitting when I was a teenager, and I was babysitting this little 6-year-old girl who I really loved. She was super cute. And we were playing Hangman, where you have to like guess the word. Someone comes up with a word, and then you're guessing letters.
She was advanced for 6 years old.
Yeah, she was pretty smart. So we're playing this game. I'm dead. I'm so dead because I've guessed so many letters. It's not right. I'm like,
she's like adding on parts to the Hangman
she's
thing.
Like, now we're gonna do a shoe. And so her parents come home like right as we're ending, and she insists like, leave us alone. We're finishing the game. Like, Vanessa hasn't guessed yet, and so they're just kind of like, giggling in the background, getting settled after their date night or whatever. And so finally, I'm like, I give up. I do not know what this word is. And she goes, Virgina. So she had spelled it Furgina. It was just nice. And her parents just laughed so hard. And I was like, yeah, Virgina. It kind of makes sense. You're Virgina, Virginia.
Yeah.
All right, walk us through the names for penises.
All right, so we had pickle, peepee, puddler, Frankenbeans, classic. Something About Mary. One of when I was younger, I thought that was one of the funniest movies I'd ever seen. I'm not sure if it totally stands up anymore. Probably a bit problematic. Turkey, tallywhacker.
There were a lot of those.
This was like the male equivalent of the Susie.
Yeah, I was like, where did this come from?
What is
a tallywhacker?
I bet we have a lot of British followers on Instagram. I bet this is a UK thing. Willikins. Willikins. I mean, I kind of have to say that with a British accent. Yeah. I just don't know how to say it with an American. Willikins.
Willikins.
Willikins. And then One-Eyed Willy. Winker Wanker. Wanka. Dickerdo.
Dinkerdo.
Thank you for correcting me.
Dinkerdo.
Hang dangler. I like just dangler. How come that's not like
I put those 4 together because I really like the way those flowed. One-Eyed Willy, Winker Wanker, Dinkerdo, Hang Dangler, Tallywhacker.
That's a say it 5 times fast situation. Miff.
Yeah, which is weird because you hear muff.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like, that could be real confusing.
My miff or my muff? Yeah. I don't know.
Bobo, Noodle, and Dinky. Little Dinky Noodle.
Those are funny to look back on as adults, but
let's just leave them as funny, and that's it.
Yeah, so we think it's really important to help your children correctly label their genitalia. I mean, I think this is important. By saying the actual name, you're not creating this shame around the body part.
Or mystery.
Yeah, or that sense of mystery. I think kids pick up on we're using this funny name because this part is so shameful that we're not even supposed to say what it is.
It's like he who cannot,
What? I think I know where you're going, but I'm not going to say it. I want you to figure it out.
It's like he who cannot be named, he who shall not be named.
And who is that?
Voldemort.
There you go.
I'm kind of shocked that there's no like Harry Potter names in that list above.
I know. There should be something about like
your Ron.
Your wand.
Oh no, I was saying Ron, but
You're Hermione. Okay, so it also like when kids know the correct names for their body parts, it gives them autonomy over their body. It helps them, also protect themselves in situations when you aren't there. It helps around like learning to give consent. We'll get to that in a little bit, but there are just so many reasons why it's important and valuable to use the correct terms. All right, next point that we want to talk about is the talk. We hate that it's called the talk because it really gives you the impression that it's one talk, right? Like,
yeah, that's how it is stereotypically, I think. In movies or what I think of American Pie when his dad sits Jim down to have like the talk and it's like, oh boy, here we go.
Mm-hmm. We asked people on Instagram, did you feel prepared? Did you feel like you had enough information the first time you had sex? We wanted to get a sense of like, did the talk serve you? 80% of people said that they were not prepared, did not have enough information the first time they had sex. And oh my God, we got a lot of DMs from people saying like, are you kidding? I literally knew nothing.
I would venture a guess that there might be some parents listening to this who go, wait, hold on a second. Like I did give my kids the talk. I did give like all of this good information. But what I can say as a child of parents who received the talk, I think the reality is it feels so awkward in the moment. Even if you gave all the information and were super thorough, a kid who's like 13 or 14 or something is probably not very well positioned to be retaining all that information because all they're hearing in their mind is like, oh my God, this is so awkward. This is so awkward. This is so awkward. So the unfortunate reality is that it's not about having one very thorough talk. It's probably about having a lot of talks over and over where each one builds on the last. Each one reinforces the last because I talk to my mom a lot about like memories from being a child. And like very often my memories are like very singular. It's like, oh, well, I just remember this one time where you said this. And she's like, no, like we talked about that like all the time. And you come away with like a limited slice of things. Your brain is developing. Yeah. With all these new experiences happening.
You need the repetition for sure. Yeah. So 80% of people not feeling prepared to have sex. Bottom line here is that we just have to do better for our kids. We have to do better for these, future generations.
We also might never be perfectly prepared for something that's brand new, that's different. It's very emotional.
We'll get to
but
that.
I think better prepared is a good goal.
And I think that this could even be a good way to introduce the topic of sex to your kids, is kind of share with them, what did you learn from your parents? And maybe it's telling your kids something like, my parents didn't talk about sex with me, and that had a lot of negative impacts on me. It left me feeling like sex was shameful or it was something we couldn't talk about. When I wanted to talk to my parents, I felt like it wasn't safe to do so. So you can kind of share your own experiences and tell your kids, I want it to be different between us.
Yeah, you could also share like, what was it like the first time you did have sex? Without all that information, like what didn't go right? What do you wish you had known? Like that's a kind of sneaky way to impart all the right information is like, I wish I had known this. I wish I had known that.
Yeah. So I'm sure right now a lot of you are thinking like, oh my gosh, but like what is age appropriate and what do I share when? It's definitely a good idea to just start early and follow their lead. So kids are naturally curious. They will often blurt out questions. And if you make them asking questions a safe and okay thing, they will continue to ask questions. We also do have a YouTube video where we specifically broke down what are the age-appropriate conversations to initiate with your kids at different stages. So we'll put a link to that YouTube video in our show notes. Definitely go and check that out. You do want to follow your kids' lead, but you also need to initiate some conversations on your own, and that YouTube video will tell you exactly, what to say and when. It's also important for you to like be informative when you have these conversations. So try your best to answer your kids' questions like as straightforwardly as you can. And a great way that you can just show your kids that it's safe to talk about, that you guys can continue having these conversations, is to end the talk with like, does that answer your question? Or do you have any other questions? That just helps the conversation keep going. And even when the talk is over, if they're like, yeah, I'm done, you can say something like, I'm so glad that you asked me that. We can talk about this anytime you want to.
This is a really good example of why the oxygen mask thing is really so important. Like why you need to be comfortable yourself. You need to really be practicing what you're preaching. If you are like, oh, well, I know what the right things to say to my kids are, even if I don't necessarily fully believe it for myself, and you might share all of that. Maybe you do a really, really good job, but then the moment your kid asks a question that you weren't prepared for, and you're like, oh God, I don't like, and, once you kind of slip and go into like, you feel ashamed because you're like, oh, I don't know how to answer this. Like your kid is going to pick up on that. So It's much easier to just try to get comfortable yourself and just be really honest and straightforward. And if you don't know the answer to a question or you're not sure, you can share that. Like, I feel like
let's look it up together.
Yeah.
I'm actually not sure about that. That's a great question. Let's go look it up together.
Yeah, I think that could be a huge way to build trust. Is like, this is not a topic where we have, we know everything. I wish I knew everything. I don't. And let's see if we can learn together.
Yeah, absolutely. Another point that we want to bring up in having these conversations with your kid is that it's really important to teach them about consent. So this is a nuanced topic. It definitely warrants its own podcast episode, but we wanted to mention it here because it's so important. So, kids need to understand that they get to decide what to do with their bodies. They don't have to be, forced to do things with adults or with other people that they don't want to do. Talking about consent being like only an enthusiastic yes means a yes. Talking about what to do if they receive some sort of unwanted touch or unwanted request. Again, this is all really complex stuff. We're not going to get into all the specifics, but we definitely recommend that you educate yourself about consent. We'll talk about it more in the future, but consent has to be a big part of the conversation. Another big part of the conversation should be talking about sex in a positive way.
Yep.
So I think so many of us think about like talking about sex with our kids, and we think about like avoiding pregnancy and not getting STIs and not being immoral. Like we think of all the things not to do versus being able to share with our kids. Sex is a joyful, beautiful, pleasurable experience. Like it's such a gift that we get to have sex and we get to experience that kind of connection with ourselves and with other people. So, that needs to be a part of the conversation as well.
If all you say is don't do this, don't do that, don't do that, in a best case, your kid is going to be like, okay, great. I know what not to do. I still don't know what to do.
Exactly.
That's like a best case scenario. The worst case scenario, which I think is probably the more common one, is your kid starts to do some things, and some of those things that you said don't do, they start to do, and it actually goes okay for them. The world doesn't end. They don't get pregnant, whatever. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden your kid's like, all my parents said was don't do all this stuff. I just did some of it. It was totally fine. So like everything they told me must be bullshit.
Or even worse, I think a lot of times we hear like, don't do this. And we, especially as like teenagers, are like, oh, well, I'm going to do it then. Like there's an allure to when somebody says don't do something. So I think the bottom line is your goal is to instill in your child the ability to make healthy decisions for themselves, to weigh the pros, the cons, to get in touch with their beliefs, their values, and to be able to make those decisions. Just like you would say, you want your kids to make healthy decisions about anything else in life. Like, you don't just want to teach them, don't do this, don't do this. Like, you want them to be equipped to make their own decisions, right?
All right. So what if you're a parent and you're listening to this and you're like, oh my God, my kid is 15 and I've like never had any of these conversations. Like what is, maybe I should just like cut my losses and say, well, maybe next generation will be better.
No, I mean, I think, definitely our advice is to start as early as you can with your kids. But that being said, like, it is never too late to start. You can still have a huge impact on your child by just starting the conversation, whatever age they are. That can actually be a nice way to initiate the conversation, is take ownership and say, you know what, I wish that we had talked about this sooner, but I want us to start talking about it now and to continue talking about it. I think that can be a great way to just like open that door up.
And if your kid is 20 years old and you never have these conversations, you call them up and be like, you know what? I want to have a remedial talk. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know what you do if that's the case.
No, I mean, I think one of the coolest things about me becoming a sex therapist is that as an adult, I've been able to have conversations about sex with my parents. We did an episode, I'm forgetting the number right now, I think it was 11, about like how I turned my orgasm struggles into this business. We talk about my version of the talk with my parents and how it was not a good conversation. It was super awkward. It was one talk that didn't really go anywhere, didn't have any information in it.
I don't think it was really a talk. It was just, it was a, do you have any questions? Nope, great, yeah. Okay.
But, so as an adult, we've talked about sex so much. It's like a very regular, open part of conversation. I would say probably every time we see my parents, we talk about sex. And that's been a really healing thing for all of us. Like, it doesn't matter that I'm an adult, that I've had a lot of sex already. Like, it's still really healing and special for us to be able to talk about it together. So it truly is never too late. Okay, so the final point that we want to make around this is just to be a safe place for your kid. So like, let your kid know, hey, sex is a complex thing. You're probably going to struggle at some point with like making the decision that feels healthy for you, right for you. You're probably going to make decisions that you regret making. But I want you to know that I am always here for you. I will always be here for you. I'll always help you take care of whatever consequences come up for you, whatever challenges you're running into. I think that's just such a beautiful gift to give to your child, is to let them know that you are always there for them no matter what.
All right, so we talked about what to do if you're like, shoot, it's been however many years, I haven't had any conversations. What if like just last week you had a kind of negative, you had one of those like, don't do this, don't do this, don't do that conversations, and now you're like listening to this and you're like, oh God. Yeah, now I've gone and done it.
Well, I think it's so important to cut yourself some slack. So talking about sex, it is hard. And you are not always going to get it right. You are definitely going to make mistakes, and you're going to say things that you wish you hadn't said, or not say things that you wish you had said. You're going to get caught off guard by questions. Like, stuff is going to happen. So I think, again, this is such a nice way to build trust with your kid, is to let them know, like, hey, I'm a work in progress. I'm still working on this too. I'm still working through my own shame and releasing that. You're not always going to get it right, but just own up to your mistakes. You can always come back to your kid and say, you know what? You asked me that question and I got really embarrassed and I didn't answer it, but I want to answer it because that was a great question and I wish that I had responded to that more positively in the moment. Something like that. So you can always loop back around to your kid and say, hey, can we do that over again? I'm sorry for XYZ. Or, it's just such a great way for your child to see you as a human being, not just as their parent. So I think as long as you keep making that consistent effort to communicate with your child is going to get the message that sex is normal, it's healthy, and it's nothing that they should be ashamed of.
All right, I love all those tips. Let's get into some listener questions now. This is where the rubber meets the road.
I'm glad you like our tips.
I do. I genuinely do. Now, we will see.
Wait, I want to do a podcast of tips that we don't like. Here's our terrible podcast filled with terrible tips. Yeah. We just decided to create it.
Or how about we like intersperse good tips with terrible tips and we make the audience vote. Guess. What are the good tips and what are the bad tips? And if you put the bad tips into place, sorry, you're screwed.
It's a really high stakes podcast.
All right, but what I was saying is, this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where we see, does Vanessa practice what she preaches?
Wow.
Can she answer these questions without getting flustered?
You're just thinking about that DM that we got, aren't you? Yesterday, that was like, do you actually practice what you preach?
It was a confusing DM.
It wasn't like a negative one.
It wasn't grammatically correct, and I'm not sure if they knew exactly what the words meant that they were saying or if they swapped some words, but it was confusing. It was like, so you experiment, but do you something?
Yeah, she's like, do you practice what you preach? I know that you experiment with all the things that you talk about, but do you practice them? Like, I don't know what this means. I'm so confused. Anyways, let's practice and experiment.
Far and away the most popular question, this topic. I'm just going to read one of the variants that we got. I want to talk about sex with my kids, but I don't want to give the impression that I approve of them having sex at a young age.
Yeah, a lot of people were very worried about this idea of like, if I talk to my kids about sex, then they're going to have sex.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important for us to acknowledge your kid knows that sex exists.
Yeah. Do they see movies?
I mean, are they on the internet?
TV?
Yeah. I mean, it's shocking how young kids are when they first get exposed to the topic of sex. Unless you want to raise your child in a complete protective bubble, like they're going to learn about it. It's important for them to learn about it from you, from like a trusted resource, from somebody who can give them the correct information instead of like the weird things that they're going to hear from their friends on the playground and stuff like that. And also, I think it's so important for us to acknowledge that like talking about something doesn't mean that it's going to happen. So that's sort of like us saying, oh, I don't want my kids to learn about Mussolini in history class because then they're going to go on and become a dictator, right? It's like, no, that's not how it works.
Yeah, that's not what education is not like you learn something and you just do it.
Yeah.
That would be nice. That would be kind of like the Matrix style thing where you just like plug in the whatever program and then you're like super adept at doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm ready to be a little dictator.
So your kid learning about sex is not going to instantly make them turn around and go have sex that instant.
It's also not going to like sexually activate them. Like puberty happens when it happens.
The sex switch gets flipped on.
The switch gets flipped.
That's a real tongue twister. Dinky donkey, tallywhacker,
switcher flipper.
Switcher flipper. So the switch does not get flipped where the second that your child hears the word sex, all of a sudden they are a sexual being. Anyways, getting back to the question, the point that we really want to make when you're talking about sex with your kid, it should be really focused on healthy decision making, on helping them feel equipped to decide like what's going to feel good and right for them when it comes to their sex life. So it's not that you're saying, hey, sex exists, go out and have it whenever you want to.
Oh, it's this awesome thing. It feels really, really good and you can do it whenever you want. Like that's not what we're teaching about it. This is something that people do when they're really close and there's a lot of emotional things involved with it. Something that we typically wait until we're a bit older and in a more serious relationship or something like that.
Yeah, whatever your personal, values are around that, you can teach that to your kids. But again, helping them become like a decision maker, helping them identify what's going to feel right for themselves. The other thing that I want to mention here is this reminds me of actually something that came up in my childhood. When I was about 16, I had a serious boyfriend. I went to my mom and I told her, I want to be prepared if I do end up having sex. I'm not right now, but I want to be prepared. I want to go on birth control pills. And my mom flipped out. She said that, how dare I think about that? She wasn't going to make it easy on me. She wasn't going to get me an appointment. It was a very shameful conversation for me. And here I thought I was being really responsible and wanting to protect myself. I was saying, I'm not ready to have sex yet. I just want to be prepared in case I do feel ready at some point. I brought it to her because I wanted to have this conversation with her. So that was a very shame-inducing conversation for me.
And I bet that was the last time you brought something like that to her.
It was. And I had sex. I went ahead and had sex. My mom saying, I'm not going to make it easy for you, or, how dare you be thinking about this? Like, that didn't stop me from having sex. And I think that's one of the really harsh, challenging realities. And I really empathize with parents who might be struggling with this of like, oh my God, my kid is like a baby. Like, I don't want my kid having sex. Like, they're so young, they're so innocent. Like, I want them to wait till later. I can completely empathize with the fear that must have come up for my mom, like thinking about her firstborn baby wanting to have sex. And at the same time, like one of the challenging realities is you cannot prevent your kid from having sex. If you want to keep them locked in a bubble where they're never allowed to go outside, sure. My mom made it really hard on me. Like I was not allowed to have alone time with my boyfriend. She always called his parents when I went over. Like she made it hard, but I still did it. We still figured it out. Kids are fucking
crafty.
sneaky. Again, it's like I just feel so much compassion. I know that this is really, really fucking hard to deal with, but I do think it's important to acknowledge we can't completely control our kids. The best that we can do is, again, like equip them to make healthy decisions for themselves, talk about those healthy decisions in an open, a positive, non-shaming way, but also just coming from this place of recognizing like, yeah, you might want your kid to wait until they're 45, to start having sex.
Not even the 40-year-old virgin, the 45-year-old virgin.
You're not going to be able to. You will actually guarantee that your kid will have sex at a younger age and not be safe, not be smart about it if you don't talk about sex or if you talk about it in this very shameful way. Ironically, by talking about it openly, by giving them the information that they need, by helping them make healthy decisions, they will actually wait until healthier situations.
All right, so the next question is, we're religious, but I don't agree with all of my religion's views about sex, and I don't want those views to harm my children. What do I do?
So I think this is a great opportunity to have really open and honest conversations with your kids about that. Being able to share with them, hey, you're probably going to hear X, Y, Z, or, our religion teaches so-and-so. And I just want you to understand, like, this is not something that I believe in. And here's why. What do you think about that? Open up a conversation with your kid. Religion can be challenging because you may not agree with all of the religious beliefs that your religion or your church or your religious leader believes in. And like, that's okay. We're allowed to kind of pick and choose what we want out of religion and our relationship with a higher power. We're allowed to have agency in that. And so I think having that kind of conversation with your kid can just be really beneficial. Yeah, are they, in some sort of program where they're, regularly being exposed to this and like really negative stuff? It could get a little bit challenging. Maybe you want to rethink like their participation in certain religious groups or programs or whatever it is. But I think just having that conversation of, hey, I don't actually believe this. Here's why. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that can be a really good opportunity to just start kind of showing the gray area in life to your kids. It's very easy to just have this black and white thinking from a young age. This stuff is right, that stuff is wrong, and it's really clear cut. And then as we get older, we all learn ourselves where that gray exists, how there's really not that much just straight up black, white, right, wrong in the world. And this can be a great opportunity to kind of show like, hey, there's a lot of people that say you really shouldn't do this, you can't do that. Here's what I think, and like, here's how it's challenging to figure all this stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
All right, our last question is, we have 3 7-year-old girls. Our littlest touches... Okay, misread that. All right, we're going to re-record this.
No, let's keep going. I mean, they could have triplets, sure. It would be better if it was like 7 3-year-old girls.
No, okay. What is written here is... All right,
3,
people.
2, 7.
It says we have 3-7-year-old girls. We have 37-year-old girls. No, we have girls who are between 3 and 7 years
There
old.
you go.
I don't know how many there are because they didn't say. There must be more than one because they are between 3 to 7, and our littlest one touches herself. What to say to not make it shameful? First of all, don't shame me for misreading 3-7-year-old girls because they might have triplets.
They could.
And one of them is just a lot shorter than the other because it's the littlest one.
It's just the runt.
Yeah. There's one runt.
The runt of the litter.
There's 2 really tall ones and 1 short one.
Nothing funnier than childhood masturbation. Oh my God. All right. So this is a complex topic, but we wanted to mention it because we got so many questions about it. So the bottom line that you need to know is that masturbation is a completely normal and healthy experience at any age. Fetuses in the womb masturbate. So it is something that we do at every point in our lives. But of course, like, this is really uncomfortable to think about your 7-year-old girls masturbating.
Thinking about our little runt touching herself. Wow, I've gone and done it.
I don't know if I could get through this. I want to get a shirt for myself made that's like runt. Mommy's little runt. I'm definitely the runt of the litter.
True, you are.
I am. I'm the littlest one. Okay, so masturbation. The thing with kids masturbating is that it's not a sexual experience in the way that we think of like adults masturbating. Children are just exploring their bodies, and there's this sense of like, oh, cool, there's my dilly-dally or my little tallywhacker, my Susie. No, they're not going to do that because you're teaching them the correct names. Basically, we have an entire YouTube video dedicated to how to address this, like exactly what to say to your kids, other things that you need to know about it. So we will put the link to that video in the show notes as well. But we just wanted to mention here, it's totally normal. It's perfectly healthy. Nothing's wrong. There are just constructive ways that you can talk to your kids about like when and where they do this. So check out that YouTube video for more information about that. Whew, I made it.
Congrats. Congratulations, my little runt. What do we want to leave the good people with today?
Well, we hope that you've enjoyed this episode. And you know what? I want to say I am so stinking proud of you for listening to this episode.
Me? Thanks.
Not you. I was purposely trying to not make eye contact with you so you didn't think I was talking to you. No, dear listener, I am incredibly proud of you for listening to this episode because I know that sex is a hard topic. That is why we have jobs, is because it's such a challenging topic for us. And I think it says volumes about you as a parent that you are willing to tackle this topic and that you want to end that generational shame cycle for your kid or your kids.
Yes.
Like, you are fucking awesome. You are making change in the world. You are hopefully going to put us out of business. That's actually our goal. Yeah. Like, our goal is that we want to be put out of business.
Yeah, please retire us early. Send us out to the farm.
Our business shouldn't have to exist. You know, we should all just feel empowered to have happy and healthy relationships with sex. Again, we just want to say thank you. You're fucking awesome. You're doing great work. It's going to be hard. You're not always going to get it right, but you're doing an amazing job. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So if you are wanting to learn more, we've got a bunch of links for you in the show notes. We've got that episode from the podcast about purity culture. We have the YouTube video about age-appropriate conversations to have and the YouTube video about children masturbating. So make sure to check out all of those resources.
That's all for today's episode of Pillow Talks. Thank you so much for listening. Join us again next week when we talk about, drumroll please. Oh, I think Art was going to do that.
Oh, okay. Will he do a better drum roll than me?
All right, let's see. Drum roll, please. Butt stuff.
Going from talking about kids to butt stuff. That's how we roll on this podcast of bad advice.
From little runts masturbating to butt stuff. We got it all. Make sure, follow us, listen to Pillow Talks every Thursday. But definitely join us for butt stuff. Okay, bye.
God. That was ridiculous. Little runt.